I remember when I came out to my parents right after my graduation, where they're setting up doctors and engineers for me to get married to. And I was like, oh boy. My mom's mom is still, she's in her 90s and she knows who Puja is. Like, she's trying to understand who's this person. And now she calls her my Mitini, which is the cutest thing. I'm like,
Right.
I'll take that.
Hello and namaste. Today we have two very, very special guests, and I'm so excited that they're on our podcast. Let's welcome them, Puja Singh and Richa Bhandary.
Hello, thank you for having us, Preeti.
Yeah, it's really great to be here with following your journey and great to be a part of it.
No, awesome. I adore you guys. So I'm so grateful that finally our community will get to know you, the two of you as professionals, as Nepalis, / Indians, / UK. Like, there's a lot of identity, lots of layers to peel. Tara. I'm so glad you were doing this. To get us started, in your own words, tell us, who is Puja and who is Richa?
Yeah. How is it that I kind of explain what I think who Puja is or not think, which I feel, and then is that a good way to go?
Yeah, let's do that.
That's
fine.
Let's do it, and I can say who Richa is, right? That's a good one.
But I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, that's a good one. So Puja for me is of course, for me, she's home, she's family, she's my wife. But when I think about her as a person, she's very energetic, lively, I would say very creative, kind, but also very visionary. It's been so interesting for me to kind of even get to know her when we've been together for 12 years now, married for 10. But she comes from a really pretty interesting, unique background. Grew up in countryside England. She will stop you if you say, oh, you're from London. Like, no, she's from like a countryside in England, which she's very proud of. But Leicester, that's right. And then third generation British Indian, so, and then also just kind of got exposed to traveling at early ages, but from countryside now to in New York City. It's a very interesting mix and the flow, and anywhere she is, she flows with it, and which I love about that. But professionally, I hear that she started when she was 13 years old, doing stuff. It's one thing that I know about Puja is she worships work, which was wow, okay, you really care, which is wonderful. And then I can also see why, just the way that she does things. For me, it was a family business, or moving to New York in her mid-30s and kind of figuring out a lot of things, and now kind of working in a very professional setup from having her own business. So that flow is also beautiful. So I just think of her as this innovative, visionary, always adjusting, always adapting, and mix of all is what I think I would say Puja is.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Top that, Puja.
All right. I don't know if I can top that, Preeti. It's going to be a bit difficult. So who is Richa? Aside from being the most awesome person in my life and being my wife, I'm very proud to call her my wife. So Richa's a person that really gives her heart to everything. So anything that she puts her mind to, anything that she, really wants to do, she will give her heart and dedicate herself to that project. Whether it's learning something new, she might want to learn about, the World War. She will give her heart to that, her soul to it. Or if she wants to, help someone or train someone up, she'll give her heart and soul to it. And in that, she just really lives her life to the fullest as well, and with such joy and enthusiasm. But from around 12 years ago, really getting to know her, I can say that she just touches people in the most wonderful, caring way, and through small and large interactions, that anyone that crosses her path, she just sends these ripples of care and love and joy through them, and it's just this peaceful calm. So I kind of think that the few words that I can use to really describe her would be an inspirational silent warrior. She's just a very, very humble person, but I really do mean that. I think she's an awesome individual. She's No, my wife, my best friend, and also a loving daughter and a loving friend.
I love all of that. I love all of that. And I think we should definitely try it for some of our other podcast guests as well. I think it's so nice to actually hear from the other side, your significant other, in terms of what you mean to them, right? So thank you for sharing. Just for our audience, I'll just also read out, what you do professionally. So Puja is the VP of Global Strategic Alliances at Upshop, and Richa is a product manager at City. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Perfect. No, I totally love all of that. And one thing I'll also mention is a couple of months ago, I think Richa was on a panel for product management at TGND, and we had shared about all the panelists, right, through our LinkedIn page and so on. And I remember her just a post just about her on LinkedIn. It was so, what's the word, like everybody that knew her from like professionally on, everybody like totally loved you, right? So you could see that outpouring of affection and so on. So I think it's also a testament to who you are as a person. So again,
that's very kind.
No, that's completely true as well. So, but let's move to, your childhood and youth and how that's shaped you. You've grown up in different parts of the world. How have those experiences shaped you into the person you are?
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting. So childhood for me was back in the UK. Like Richa mentioned, it was in the countryside, but I would say that I'm like second and third generation Indian, like British Indian. Like both sides of my family originally came from the north of India, Punjab, and my grandfather came over in the 30s to the UK. And my dad was born in the UK. My mom married my dad. She came from India as well. And I would say that, through both sides of my family, something that's really shaped me is like hard work and perseverance. And that's really carried me through to where I am today. So not hard work, not just pertaining to, actually my career or establishing myself in a professional environment, but hard work in just really giving everything that you've got to try and better relationships, to better yourself. And sometimes I have forgotten that on the way, but every time I do forget that, I kind of draw inspiration from my family. So I think that's kind of really shaped my life somewhat. And definitely laughter. There's always been a lot of laughter in my family. I think taking things seriously is always there, but then always having fun and joy around being around people in circumstances, making I think the most of any sort of circumstances in a jovial way has always been something that kind of comes to my forethought of I think what's shaped me today. What do you think? What about yourself?
Yeah. It's the element that shaped my childhood. I would say I'm very blessed to be kind of, I grew up in Kathmandu. I left home to do my undergrad here in America. I mean, briefly high school in India, but my upbringing has always been about it was never kind of, you should be this or you should be that. Love was never kind of earned. It was just given very freely. So for me, for that, I think it's such a sense of freedom of who you are, right? And I think that acceptance, that love, and not kind of having really strong ideals or certain dogmatic ways to kind of govern and stay in that framework in life, that was never been part of that growing experience. So I think created a lot of freedom, I would say. And I think my own self-acceptance, all kind of starts from there. My grandma, I would say, she was really into self-realization and self-discovery. And so I learned that growing up, it was maybe not so much, sitting in front of the idol and stuff, which, I respect. I have full respect. But it was always about that. And also my dad, my mom, my joint family I grew up in, it was always surrounded by that. Not that it was not any, we still had like, certain ideas about certain things, but again, it was mostly influenced more by love and just your individuality that was embraced. So I would think that has fundamentally, I think, kind of shaped everything. I think it's a big part.
Big part, right?
Yeah.
But as you, reflect on who you are as people, right, as adults, and especially, I do want to talk a little bit about your gender identity, and especially how still it's so rare in the Nepali, South Asian community, right? How were you able to embrace that? How was that, support or lack of support from, people around you that sort of helped you embrace that side of yourself?
Yeah. No, I think, and again, I think this definitely goes back to the kind of, the acceptance. I mean, it started with, I have, I'm dyslexic. I have a learning disability. I didn't know that in the in 80s when you're growing up in Kathmandu, you get slapped for not being able to read or stand up on a desk, right? So that awareness is, but there was always that kindness that was shown. It's like, okay, you know this, you have a challenge, but you are excellent in math. So like there was always that encouragement of like that self-discovery. And I would say that it's been very interesting. I unlike maybe very and I've heard that, and I have so much love and respect for the kind of journey people have to go through. But for me, embracing has always again been about my own self-awareness and understanding and being able to meet people where they are. Right. I remember when I came out to my parents right after my graduation, where they are setting up doctors and engineers for me to get married to, and I was like, oh boy. But I was kind of understanding that, and as I was understanding that, I was embracing and I was sharing that. I didn't even know the word like gay, what that meant when I moved to America. But I remember even talking to my mom, and I was in my early 20s, and explaining in words, like I've never been into label or that identity. It was never had been like a forceful thing, but hey, what I'm supposed to feel maybe for a part like a guy, I feel for a woman. And then that was like, of course it was like, oh wow, okay, what does this mean? How do we kind of take care of you? And I remember she just saying that your happiness means, she doesn't know what this means, but like if that makes you happy, like that was a beginning step. So it's been very gentle. I've been very lucky, and I think that, and it's the same thing, with my sisters and my cousins and my uncle and just kind of embracing that. It's a very cute thing. Both my grandma, one passed away a few years ago, and my mom's mom is still, she's in her 90s, and she knows who Puja is. And I love that, like she is, she wanted to first make sure that Puja is she's trying to understand who's this person, and now she calls her my Mitini, which is the cutest thing. I'm like, I'll take that. It makes sense to you that you feel good about your granddaughter being with somebody wonderful, and now so it's like for her now Richa and Puja. And it was the same thing even for my dad's mom before she passed away. Like that she apparently had a conversation with my sisters, like, I like that. I know what it is, but, and again, no label, but that love and acceptance. So I've been really lucky. So it has been that acceptance and embracement has come. And I think it all started from even just understanding my own self and not kind of, just meeting people where they are and just kind of sharing that. And it's been the most incredible. I'm definitely not somebody that's going to be loud about it, and not because I'm ashamed or anything, but it's not my nature, it's not my personality. But even if it's work or where I've lived, and I've been out for a good 24 years of my life, so I feel pretty good.
Yeah, that covers it really nicely. I think for me it's been a little bit of a different journey actually. So like as I was growing up, I was always very much tomboyish, really tomboyish in my sort of tens and then teens, and I kind of knew that there was something there for me, but I just didn't know like where my attraction lay, and I didn't really invest that time in myself to have that self-discovery. And growing up in the UK, of course, there was gay people around me. I mean, Boy George was my idol, and he dressed up in a very feminine way. But at the same time, I would be out there. I'd want to play sort of football with the boys and cricket with the boys. But at the same time, I did get on with my girl cousins and friends that were girls. But I always fit in so much easier with the guys. That was because I was just so much more aligned with just the way of thinking and the way of doing. And I think that made me feel like, is that all that I am? Like, I didn't really understand, like, what being gay meant. I did have the attraction to, like, boys and girls. But as I got into my 20s, I really started to become myself, and my personality started to develop. And I've got a really, like, flirtatious, happy personality. And being in like, the hospitality business at that time, it didn't give me, first of all, it didn't give me that much time to establish and think about who I was. But second of all, I got so much exposure to so many different types of people. I think then towards my late 20s and early 30s, I did come out. It was pretty late on. I had to come out to myself fully first, which was a big deal. And then coming out to family and friends slowly. And that was because I was coming out of, like, a first relationship, which I did keep relatively secret because I think there was some kind of shame attached. And I think that's because things weren't as open where I was. Like, I didn't know whether I'd be accepted or not, right? And then that kind of sits in you thinking, doubting yourself. And I doubted myself for the longest time. But then I started to take ownership somewhat of my own life, and that was kind of the advent of forums where you could try and meet people. So I put myself out there trying to meet, a wonderful girl if I could. And slowly I got introduced to Richa through a mutual friend, and I was lucky enough to, really connect on the phone and also on Skype and then in person with her, which was wonderful. But the struggles were there with my close family. I would say the acceptance was there because, again, there was no labels attached to me being me. It was just like, oh, this is Puja. But there was just like a not understanding, because I think for my family, it was coming out at the same time as me coming out, which meant having to, and I think it still sometimes means, it's like there's almost like a social stigma attached to it. But now I think I'm sometimes, I have like, because I live in New York City, there are so many different types of people everywhere. We're lucky enough to be in such an accepting city. Sometimes I think to myself, I couldn't really live anywhere else because of the acceptance, but because in the acceptance here, it's also helped me accept who I am. And I've really started to embrace the feminine side of me in being in a gay relationship, right? Being married to a woman, but really started to embrace something where I used to feel awkward. And, it's quite subtle, but just wearing something like dresses, which I wouldn't feel comfortable in my, teen years wearing for so many different reasons. But I think it's been a journey, like you said, and it's definitely not been the struggle that a lot of people go through. And, I love going to the Pride marches or to the Dyke March in Pride Month, usually, Preeti, just because I feel like there's a lot of people out there that need support or need, community support.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is what now we like kind of trying to provide, maybe not going through that experience. Like, it's not like the loudest and the, but at least that subtle support and that kind of, and showing up, like, I've always been me, and I, being gay is part of me, but it just, and just that unashamedly just always showing up. And it's not, again, because it's funny, you have to label it to say something, but it's not even that. It is who we are. We are happy. We kind of add value to the society, to, family, friends, and that's good. And owning that part has been just that embracing of that is just so empowering. And I really encourage, like, people, just now there's a ton of support group and different areas that I think that you can take advantage, and that's how we try to embrace and show up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's like with a lot of self-acceptance as well, we both have our own self-acceptance. I think that comes to just really being so much more empathetic to like young people and older people, because a lot of older people do come out later in their lives as well. And, you know, their struggles have been real. I think sometimes that's where there's been true struggle, because they've, you know, sometimes had to set up a family and really have to mask their true feelings, which is not the nicest, you know, thing. But I think we're moving in the right direction as a society, right?
Yeah. I think so. And, you know, I think that's why also it's so important for, you know, the two of you to show up on our podcast, right? I think, you know, like Richa, as you said, you know, your gender is one part of your identity, but I think there's so many people within our community and even around it that are, you know, that haven't had that support or even that self-realization or whatever it is that has, you know, stopped them free from being authentic, right? More than anything else, right? They can't, they might have a good life, but it's not the life that they would have chosen otherwise, right? So, you know, I'm hoping that the Great Nepali Diaspora also becomes this really supportive, inclusive community, right? Where one, we don't need labels, but, you know, it's safe. It's a safe space for all of us, right? Irrespective of our views, irrespective of our gender and so on. So I'm so grateful that you're sharing this. I think it means a lot to me as well, but I think it also means it'll mean so much more to people that are, you know, going through, you know, things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Perfect. Now let's, you know, take a step back from that and, you know, talk a little bit about your journey in the professional fields, right? How was that? And especially being an immigrant, a minority, I'm sure there were some challenges. What strategies or what sort of things were useful for you in terms of navigating that experience?
But yeah, just it's interesting. Strategy is an interesting word, right? Because it's dependent on which part of the life place you are in, and you use different. That's what I was reflecting on this a bit today, and I remember like the strategy maybe I used right after college. I graduated right after 9/11, right, and it was a very competitive market, and like I was trying to establish myself. I had this whole, and so my strategy was that time like just like kind of not leaving any stone unturned, like talking to everybody, kind finding that connection. And I know it's like it gets interesting. And that time I don't even think there was as many like a professional networking group and stuff. At least, you know, internet was still kind of at its kind of starting point, and these groups were still being built. But I just remember just any kind of interaction I would have and see if there's anything, and always having that openness that, you know, I'll do anything. In 20s, I'll do anything. It's not like, yes, I have my degree in like, you know, management information system, but like, what can I do? Where can I play? So strategies like that openness, that willingness to connect, that willingness to, you know, go up, down, sideways, whatever you need to put your step forward. But then that can, and then, you know, in 30s, like I remember just leaving some jobs and like starting again. And I'm like, then you don't want to kind of maybe make so much compromise, because you know there are certain ways you're going. So how deeply you're going to go into that industry or like that skill set, and kind of really aligning based on that. But one thing that I would say is like just tuning into really, you know, there's a lot of content there, there's a lot of information there, and it gets very confusing. But again, I think that is where I go back to every part of my life, and don't want to sound preachy, but it's like kind of again getting to understand like what is that in me, that like there's always that unique part of you that kind of gives you that competitive edge, right? And how do I understand that about me? So there is a bit of, as much as there's external strategy that you can apply, but there's a lot more just like, okay, what makes me a little bit more edgy here, and how can I use that and then go into these right spaces, especially now online, and online as well as like finding these groups to employ that and like kind of explode there. So I would say it changes, but that's my general take, I think.
Yeah, I think I can definitely echo some of what Richa has said. But I came over to the US as an immigrant in my 30s, so I have a little bit of a different experience. You know, for sure, like I think now networking, and that's why I love what you guys are doing at the Great Nepali Diaspora, is just networking. In-person networking has been so instrumental to me. Initially, when I co-founded Sweet Technology, that's how I actually met the actual founder of Sweet Technology. That was through a business networking event in the Empire State Building that Richa actually accompanied me to for the free pizza, right? Yeah. No, yeah.
Always.
No, in fact, she was the one that encouraged me. So I didn't realize that New York was so network heavy at that time. That was around 12 years ago, 10 years ago. And after being at that event, I obviously met the founder, and then we became co-founders of the company. But even through that time, networking was key. And it seems like the key strategy, I'd say that the obstacles that I encountered it was tough for me to find a job that I was suitable for for 10 years running such a large operation in a restaurant, hotel and wedding venue with about 60 people there. But with it being a family business, it didn't have a name tied to it, right? And I didn't want to start right at the bottom. And I was also evaluating whether I wanted to stay in that industry. So I think the obstacles are mostly up here, because I think even if you do want to change your career, I've been able to change my career from being in hospitality to being in technology within 10 years. And that's going via the supply chain industry, in export, leading a team for Roldan Foods. And again, everything was very network heavy. So I think strategies would be to get to know as many people as possible, but also the biggest obstacle is your own obstacle of thinking that you have to be focused on either what you've studied or what you think you should go into. Because I think, like, you know how people say, oh, life is too short? I think life is actually really long now. So you're not just young at 20 years to 30 years. You've got 90 years with maybe as much time as you want to be a professional. So I think for the first 15 years of your, starting out in your career, you've got the opportunity to do maybe more than even consulting, actually diving into something like product management, or diving into hospitality, or diving into, customer success. But I think there's more options now. So I think just don't be afraid. And I think that's the way that I approached it. And it did actually, confidence was rocked initially, but I feel like even though that confidence gets knocked, if you have a strong network of friends and people that you know around you, you will always see opportunity. Like, you've got to go into it with a positive mindset. And that said, I didn't always go into it with that mindset, but that's what I would say to the me that was 8-9 years ago. Just be a lot more positive.
And open, open to just, what you can, because not having that strong, set mindset really helps.
Yeah,
it's not easy, but I think any other time, this is the best time, these in-person networking and kind of connecting. LinkedIn, great resource.
Yeah. But it is daunting. I'm sure everyone can relate to it being daunting to network, especially young people, because you sometimes think that where you're going to go and meet people is going to be, everyone knows what they're talking about, but seriously, I think very few
Nobody
people...
does, right?
No, exactly. That's what I'm everybody's kind of faking it till they're making it, so do your part. Totally. And with all heart, right? We all are trying. So just and just never be afraid to just reach out. You never know, like who's and that those are the most like kind of surprises you'll find. So yeah, keep going, keep going.
Sure.
Yeah. No, I so agree, and I think that's my advice for younger people as well, right? Just practice networking, right? It's awkward and it's not fun in the beginning, but you sort of if you do it enough, then it doesn't come off as it sort of comes off as natural, and that's what you need, right? And I think what I'm also hoping for our community is that's again that safe space where they can practice networking, right? So even if you're afraid of going out in the world, come to our events. There's no judgment. You can speak half in Nepali or whatever it is. And then once they're comfortable, they get to go out in the world and, their industry specific things and, network up, right? So that's the hope.
And connect, like, try and seek out mentor, like ask questions because, and I think that's what I absolutely adore. Like what you're doing is like, it's so relevant. And it's open, and I think that's exactly what we need, and we are here.
Absolutely. Thank you. So quick question in terms of, you've both individually and together, you've accomplished a lot. But, looking back, how do you define success? One for like on a personal level and two professionally.
Again, that's like, I love that question because it's so broad, because I think defining success is really subjective, right? And success, like you said, like it's different on a professional level and on a personal level, and maybe even it brings in your own values, right, and goals. On a professional level, definitely what goals you have. But I think like success can evolve into what you want it to be. And for me, I think, I don't even know I don't even know what I want to say, but I think there is the professional success where I felt like I was successful in my 20s doing what I was doing. And the reason I felt that was because I taught myself a lot of skills, on-the-job skills, running the restaurant, hotel and wedding venue. So success was, at that point in my life, was knowing how to, say, clean beer pipes inside out, or knowing how to, train a team of chefs for a large 200 people event. So that was success at that time. And I think now what I value professional success in being is having turned my career around and now being able to fully understand technology but still be learning at the same time. So going into it with an open mind. So that growth mindset for my career is like now what I deem as successful. If you asked me 2 years ago, I would be, right, by the time I'm 50, I want to be in the C-suite of a company. That can still happen. That can still be my ambition, and it still probably is my ambition there. But I think the success is actually doing the work, but realizing that growth from yesterday to today is successful. Yeah, and I think that's similar probably for my personal, like for personal as well. I think, I can give an example of this year starting out. There was emphasis put on like my personal mindset and also my physical my physical being. So in fact, last year, physical being. So I set myself a goal of wanting to try and run the New York Marathon this year. So now I'm in with it. And now success was getting into that. The next one will be completing that. But it won't be just the completion. It will be putting the routine and the structure in to just do that day by day. And also just like maintaining healthy relationships with the network of family and friends is what I mean. It's very broad, I would say, depending on because we have unique values, right? So those are where my values align with what I think success is.
Yeah, I think definitely, again, what success meant for me in my 20s was like getting that job and,
right.
getting my
that
immigration
title.
kind of get on that line, and then you get there, and then that kind of shifts to, and for me, it's been an interesting kind of career path for me, right? Like I excelled pretty well, and then I realized that success for me was not in leadership. Like I tried that, I hated it, and what I liked is problem solving and like building, innovating. So I'm like, I'm not going to talk about budget and what I can do and what I can do. I'm going to just, so for me, the success in my late 30s, early 40s, now has been like taking a step back. So it's like, it's interesting. It's always, and then, yeah.
No, and I think
that's what I had.
that for sharing it is so important, right? Because a lot of people, especially professional success for most people, is climbing up that rung, one, ladder, and then, the next one and so on. You never really talk about sitting still and reflecting and even saying, okay, maybe this is not the ladder I want to go on, right?
Yeah.
I think that's super important as well, right? Especially when you combine that with our immigrant minority mindset, it doesn't fit together, right? You're not supposed to, take a step back and, change your sort of game plan in a way, right?
Yeah, it's almost like it's like conflict with like what we're, but and I think that is what like kind of a little atypical mind now I'm really appreciating about that. It's like taking that it's okay. It's it's a much more global world than where it has ever been, and it's like and I think there's a lot of like this fluidity and kind of flow that happens between personal and professional, and that if you can maintain that like happy equilibrium like somewhere, and I think that has kind of worked for me, and I will kind of, and that has become success. I never thought, to your point, like I was charged with the same thing. I want it, and then it's like, okay, it doesn't matter for me.
Also, like so definitely a leaf that I've taken out of Richa's book is slowing down, right? So success, I mean, we've been, talking a lot recently about just like how slowing down can really help you accelerate more, which is so unusual in the mindset because it's, it's very conflicting in your mind when you think about it, but it's really been working for me. And it's something that we've been talking about, something that Richa has been talking to me about for many years, actually, just like slow down, because I've been out there just trying to literally run, but life is like a marathon. And I think, success isn't just climbing up that corporate ladder, because you have to evaluate your priorities, but you can still go up that corporate ladder and you'll still reach those heights. But
and good for you, like if that feels natural and you're gonna go for it, like good for you. It's like go for that, but just that.
But also
again,
don't
that
burn out, right? I think just that
right.
If you're sort of just chasing something because you think you need that external validation, I think what we're all saying is also, I think now more than ever, everybody has that. Not even the word permission, but everybody can just figure out what works for them, right?
Yeah, definitely figure out what works for them and have like some compassion for yourself when you have it might be a struggle to get to where you want to get to. Right. So I hear you.
Yeah. Now, I know a lot of people will identify with that rat race and the need to figure out where they are. But Puja, I have a question for you regarding, you touched on it a little bit that you tried entrepreneurship a few years ago and then now are back in that corporate field. What have been the major sort of differences in these career paths?
Yeah, it's the major differences, I think, is in corporate. So where I am right now is actually just like a growing company. It's a 30-year-old company. It's a fantastic company. The CEO has been so thoughtful about bringing together other companies by acquisition and growing that company. So it's still very much in fast growth, startup-ish mode. But when I was at Roland Foods, comparing it to the startup world and the entrepreneurial world, there are so many processes where you have to be slow and patient in in implementing ideas or in implementing like, new techniques or different sales techniques in order to kind of reach goals and targets. And there's less forgiveness in the corporate world to make mistakes, right? So I think at Meta, like, Mark Zuckerberg, it was like fail fast and fail fast hard, right? That's like, that goes for any startup. Like when I was doing, working at Sweetest and running that, we would fail. And once we'd failed at trying to hire people in to do the deliveries for us, it's like, okay, what can we do next? Partner with a delivery company. So failing within like 2 months really quickly, and then moving on to the next until you find something that works. So actively, actively trying to find something, because you are on a time limit, you have a certain amount of resources. Whereas in corporate, there are many more resources, but there seems to be less forgiveness for failing, and things seem to move very slow.
It's more structured in a way, right? Which sort of is
very much so. And I feel like where I am right now, it's the perfect mix. It's like the new implementation of processes. Again, if you fail, like, learn from it and move on, because it, essentially, like, those, like, success is actually built on a foundation of failures to some extent, isn't it? Like, but you learn from those mistakes, I would say. But I definitely think that's, the speed, and then also the backing that you have from say leadership. There's a lot of layers that you have to go through in corporate to actually be seen or be heard. Whereas when you're in the entrepreneurial world, you can make an impact and a difference straight away, whether it's B2B or B2C. Oh, for sure. Because you've got exposure to almost every single area of the business. And I think at least once in everyone's life, they should try and start a company or try and work in a company that especially early on, because you can really find out where you want to work as well. You don't just have to go to school and think you're going to, go into engineering or go into product management. When you bring those skills to a startup, you might realize, wow, I'm actually really good at marketing, so I'm going to go over there and either do data science or marketing or something like that, right? So I feel
No, just a follow-up question on that, because I sort of have discussions on this so much for like people that are, just starting out, right? Would you recommend that they go first to, like a corporate job or a startup? If they have, like, if, for example, they have offers from both, what would be a good, I mean, and it's obviously more complicated, but.
It is more complicated, but I think in an ideal world, if, paying rent or, looking after your family wasn't an issue, I'd say go for the startup, because of the exposure. And of course you have to be dedicated, and it's a test on your own self to be dedicated. If you know yourself already at that point, and you know that you're not committed to being a self-starter, go for corporate every day, because you're not taking a risk on yourself. So I feel like if you want to learn and you have that energy and drive to do it, go into startup, because you'll get a ton of exposure, a lot of experience in a short space of time. But if you know yourself already and you know that you have to do X, Y, and Z, or you're not a self-starter, for sure, go into corporate. And I think, in hindsight as well, like different types of corporate, like I think I learned pretty late that consulting is actually a good place to go, because it gives you exposure. It's corporate, but it gives you exposure to everything. And again, perhaps after that, you might think about going to do a master's in a certain discipline once you've been exposed to certain verticals. But I think,
No, that makes sense.
It's a bit.
No. I totally hear you. Richa, do you want to add anything to that? Do you have the
But
same?
I think it's like, I think, but it just, you can still be a self-starter, and you're a corporate. It's just, I think it all can flow in and out. But I don't know. I've always kind of worked for a corporate, so I don't know, and I find that the startup-y, and I've lived through Puja, it just for my mind, it's a bit challenging. I
It
would say.
is.
And
It is. And it's
I'm
not easy.
okay. Not for
No, no,
everybody, but
I still hear you. I think the startup world can be exciting, and you do get to do a lot, but it's also very chaotic, right? So even for people that like a little bit of structure and all of that, it is tough, right? So we have to we have to admit that as well. Um, but Richard, I wanted to little bit,
Sure.
you mentioned that you were diagnosed as dyslexic really recently, right?
but
When you think back in terms of earlier, especially in Nepal, there is no conversation. We're just starting to hear about these kind of things, right? But when you reflect on your sort of youth and growing up and so on, how how has that sort of what are you thinking now?
yeah, absolutely. So dyslexia is something I kind of was aware a while back. This is more like autism, neurodivergent. I mean, of course, dyslexia falls within that family of the neurodivergent. I'm still learning. I mean, it's been like about earlier this year. I've always there was always this unanswered, and again, I'm a very black and white person and problem solver, but there were few like fundamental things I've not been able to solve in my life. Reading was one thing, but I'm like, I can really get things done, but then, to read a simple paragraph sometime, I have to do it like 4, 5, 6 times to get to it. So, and there was always these shame and whatever was a sad, so, you're masking
Especially
that.
the comparison when you're growing up, right?
Oh yeah, oh my God, yes. And then so I mean, I think the learning and the spelling, D, B, and all of that, and in my family all like kind of we laugh about it. But on a more serious note, I think for me, the kind of my whole neurodivergent diagnosis that happened earlier this year has just kind of been eye-opening for me. And what that means is it's still a very discovery, but like what I understand from my background, a lot of things make sense. And I'm learning not to, I'm learning to own that. Again, it's like almost coming out all over again, right? In your 40s where like, okay, what does this mean? And there's so much stigma again. It's like, what does that mean? Like you can cure, or like there's nothing to cure. It's like, I'm a left-handed, 10% is left-handed. What 90% is right-handed. There's nothing to cure. It's just a different way of being. It's a different way of thinking. What makes sense. So I'm owning that, and it's like it's been interesting. And I'm like, oh, I've been like, I'm coming out all over again. But also, I am loving the clarity and like these big masses of this, like this guilt and this shame and this masking. Is like, sense, like why I think the wind, it's just dropping by like a chunk, so I feel really light. A lot of noise within my mind is settled, but again, I'd love to maybe like in a year time have this conversation, right? Like because it's such a beginning part of my journey. I've been talking, with my parents, my family, my sisters, and my cousins. Everybody's been so supportive, and of course, Puja, she has been my rock star because it's actually really through her, because she noticed certain tendency, like, why there's this certain ways. And with her encouragement, like being able to understand this, and we're both unlearning, it's been actually pretty fun. And now you kind of like, it's almost like a power, right? Like it's like a magic, like, oh, now I can really own that. And like, what do I do? And not, so yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, it has been, it's been like a whole discovery. Richa's got a beautiful mind, right? Like there's the hyper focus, and I think it's almost like it's one of the best tools that she's got to really achieve so much. And it was I think a great discovery for us earlier this year, but learning about it has been, it's almost transformational, because we're changing our lifestyle somewhat around how to manage. And I would say even her diagnosis has helped me with my communication. So I have to communicate in such a way that she understands. I think we always give the example of the dishwasher. I used to say to her, Rich, the dishwasher's on, it will be done soon. And for a neurodivergent person, or at least for her mind, it's like, okay, the dishwasher's on, that's fine. Nothing else would be done after that. But now we realize that I have to say, the dishwasher is on. When it's finished, can you please empty it and put the dishes away? So it sounds so simple to a neurotypical mind, but it's those little areas of communication, and I'm still learning. There's been times where it's been difficult because I'm not the best communicator, so I have to find a different way or a new way to say things. And I think oftentimes Richa will say, explain to me like I'm a 5-year-old, like in that film, I can't remember which film it was, but it's like, explain to me like I'm a 5-year-old. But I even have difficulty explaining to 5-year-olds. So this is helping me as well. So through those set of it's fascinating. And I think, now I realize that there's not that much literature out there about autism, especially autism in females. Yeah. And for the very little literature that there is, the people that have written these books, they've written them in such a way that it's so simple to understand from a neurodivergence lenses. But I would say that, we've had to, or Richard has had to come out to her family and friends slowly. And there's so much understanding, right? There is so much understanding.
I think that those big pieces of not being able to manage certain things, or something, just people just saying, all she's here, or there's certain ways. And I think those, and it's sweet, again, it is what it is. And, the dishwasher and house gets stacked in easily, and I'm an awesome organizer.
Actually, so the best way now.
You just have to, tell me, right? So, no, but again, I think I would really especially for women, what I'm understanding is later and later in the years, as we feel comfortable, as we feel settled, that there's this huge number of women finding out in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 70s still.
Yeah.
I went to a group one time, and so I think, again, it's very much in such an initial stage, and I would love to explore this. I'm very much in that self-discovery mode there, and maybe I can share that thought at some days.
I would love that, because what I've seen personal level Mapani and through the community is there's obviously a lot of diagnosis happening, especially about younger mulakiri, and I feel like our community is so not prepared. Okay? There is still so much shame for parents of young kids that are diagnosed. They don't know what to do. There's the society around them. People want to be nice, but they don't even know how to behave, and there's no conversation around it. Okay, right? So I feel like this is something on a personal level, and I do want to sort of take up as an initiative, because I think it is so needed. And like you said, right, as kids is one thing, and then as adults discovering that part of your life was not a lie, there's a hidden layer to it.
Right. Yeah. And there is so much grief, as much as there's such a relief in understanding, one thing that I found myself go through is oh my God, I didn't have to go through that, or maybe I didn't have to go through that, either it's you're the even professional, you understand the kind of way that you've been cramming to walk in that has never been my path. So it's what does that mean though? Because I don't know what that means. And I think the more conversation we have, more openness we have, I know who I am, I'm comfortable with who I am. And it's just, and again, going back all the way to having that a loving family, yes, whatever they knew, it was, but that embracing of that should be encouraged younger. And I'd love to, again, be a part of this journey for our diaspora as well as, in large. And yeah, I will I'll continue the conversation.
Yes, please keep me updated, and we
yes.
We'll talk about how to take that forward. That are definitely such an important topic, such a fascinating topic as well, right? I think there's so much that all of us can learn together. So
yeah.
It's very exciting. Our last sort of long type of question from my end, now you're part of the diaspora, not just the Nepali, but, larger South Asian diaspora. You've seen that evolution of all these diasporas, especially on the professional side, right? When you look at organizations like TGND and our community in general, what are some things that we could do to make it better? How can we strengthen this network?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I can probably share some experiences that I've had with the nonprofit that I was part of, start out up until late last year. So I love what you're doing, first of all. I think it's great, and the networking, the reach out, I think is fantastic. So, you know, sending out updates. I know that there's a lot of updates, and what you're doing. At least I follow you guys on LinkedIn. For me, that's the social tool where I get most of the information. So I think you're definitely doing the right thing there. But I think fostering the mentor-mentee culture would be like instrumental, because that's been so successful in where I've been before, which is like the professional entrepreneurial type network, where it's just a safe space for people to feel comfortable to ask questions, just ask questions, because not everyone knows everything. And there's sometimes a shyness around going elsewhere to kind of look for a mentor. So maybe establishing a mentor-mentee network, and it can be an international cross-border one as well, because there's probably so many different types of people, a part of your group with different experiences. But I love how you're keeping it professional, and I think that focus should just always be there, because there are plenty of social places to go, but the professional network it's sacred almost. So I feel
exactly.
Yeah. So that's kind of my 2 cents, I would say.
No, perfect. No, thank you. And just a quick note, we're actually moving to a new platform in June, and that one has a built-in sort of mentorship thing where for now we'll just match people, but over time they will be able to match them automatically depending on interest and so on. So I'm super excited. I think that adds so much value to it. So
yeah,
but really good suggestion. I do want to focus more on the mentorship aspect.
No, that's awesome. That's really good to hear.
Yeah, and from my side, I mean, I think you are doing amazing work. I have so I'm such a big fan, and just everything that goes on, I follow you. And I think as long as you're keeping this relevant, you're being inclusive to, all age groups, and especially and also just all these new discoveries, and not the existing stuff that always kind of in being inclusive and bringing into the diaspora. I think that's relevant, keeping it relevant, and not being a dinosaur after some time. I think, and with you, I mean, it's going. I know it. So
for sure.
You're doing awesome job.
I think you're doing a really good job of making uncomfortable conversations really comfortable. And that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. Keep going. It's amazing.
No, thank you. I mean, I think what I love is, even though I started it, I think there's just this massive positive energy, right? So that's why I feel like in terms of timing, in terms of all of this, it's the right time for it. So I'm just so grateful for everybody that sort of sends these positive vibes, and just, even you guys, right, in terms of encouragement and so on. So I so appreciate it. And I think, 2024, especially with the platform and all the memberships that we're rolling out, I think it's going to be bigger and better. So
that's amazing. Yeah, that's awesome.
Awesome. Next, we have a segment that is, a little different. It's a rapid fire round. So I have, I think, 5 questions. Very simple. I'll just ask something, and you just, answer with the first word that comes to your mind. And maybe because it's the two of you, maybe we can even see who has the better answer. Nothing scary. Just
for a competition.
Like a bit of that. That's mine.
Perfect. So let's get started. The first one is favorite place in the world.
Paris. I think, we're both Paris.
Amazing.
I actually, you know what? I changed. Never mind. New York City. There's no place like New York. I mean, that's it. I don't know why I even said Paris. We love that place.
Yeah,
You love that place as well.
romantic. New York is home. So
That's right.
you get
Gonna keep both.
silly. That works. Favorite Nepali food?
Momos. Momos, I'd say the same. Yeah, totally. Momos.
Do you have a favorite in the city? In Queens?
Yes. We love Panther. Yeah. And then, yeah. And I always just go there across the street and that's it.
That's true.
I should explore really.
But we're open to recommendations for
There's
sure.
tons of amazing places. There's one that I don't know if you've been to Momo Crave. They have like all kind of taco momos and sizzler momos and tandoori. It's like insane. So you should definitely give it a shot. I'm going to send you the address after this.
Awesome. That would be great. Let's do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have a favorite Indian food?
Yes. Chicken curry.
For me, dal makhani.
Oh, yeah. You love it, don't you?
Yes.
So apart from these, do you have something completely like a food or restaurant that you love in New York?
So there's a restaurant near us called Shuket, and it's a Israeli Mediterranean type restaurant, and it's owned and run by a female chef. And that is, for me, I've been to so many restaurants. I love pastis, but that's my favorite restaurant. The kebabs, the fish, the hummus.
That sounds really good.
Yeah.
What about you?
I love pastis, so that's done meat packing. French food, amazing French onion soup. I only go there sometimes just for lunch, just to have the soup. I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Next, a Nepali author or singer that you like, that you've heard of.
Oh, now I'm going to struggle. But a Nepali singer.
We can choose a South Asian one.
Oh, Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan.
Bollywood music.
Yeah, Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. I swear by him. I absolutely love him.
You know, like for me, I still sometimes find myself humming like Nana and Gopal. Like I know I grew up, but like they are many amazing. But I find myself like I'm so that tune, that like his voice. So I would say that I'm going very traditional.
I know. Very nice, very nice. The last question from me, a quote that you really like.
A what that we really like?
Like a saying quote.
Oh, a quote.
You should spread.
That's interesting. So a really recent one that I've been saying, like I heard it just a few weeks ago, and I swear by it, is follow your talent, not your passion.
Yeah.
And I keep on saying that to myself because I have a lot of passions and I have to stay focused. Follow my talent.
Oh, I'm totally dumbfounded right now. Like there's like a freeze happening. Oh, can I take a pass?
Yes.
You win.
Well, no, you could think of something.
Yeah, maybe that'll. I don't know.
The wife is always right. That's an easy one.
That's it. Oh, that's a good one.
We're both right all the time.
Oh, that's it. That's a recipe for trouble. Yeah. But yes, that's great. Colin.
No, perfect. Thank you both for joining. I know this is something that I've been wanting to do for so long. And I'm so glad you guys could come on the podcast, but also share your stories, right? I think this means so much to me. And I think it can mean so much to people that will listen to it. So I'm so grateful. Thank you both for joining.
No, thank you for having us. Thank you so much.
It's lovely to share our stories and be here. So thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Perfect. And for us listeners, please listen, like, subscribe, and send us feedback. Thank you.